March 6, 1944. 25,000 feet over Ostersleben, Germany, wind howls against the thin aluminum skin of AB-17 as the formation pushes eastward, the contrail stretching like chalk lines across a frigid sky. Below them, the Reich sprawls in gray winter gloom, factories, rail yards, and cities hidden beneath clouds. Captain William Red Hathaway of the 357th Fighter Group tightens his grip on the control stick of his brand-new P-51B Mustang. The cockpit is cramped, vibrating, alive with engine noise. The Packard-built Merlin engine snarls as he pushes through the bomber stream, climbing a little higher to get a better look at the horizon. Then he hears it, the interphone crackle, bandits. 11 o'clock high. Looks like, hell, they're coming right for the bombers. Hathaway squints. At first, they're only flickers against the blue. But as they close in, sunlight glints off wings. Long noses. Heavy cannons. Focke-Wulf 190s. Dozens of them, and just as they've done for months, they form a perfect, disciplined wall, whipping into a climbing attack aimed directly at the flying fortresses. Inside one of those bombers, Waist Gunner Sergeant Michael Donnelly braces himself against the freezing wind blasting through the open window. He's been here before. He knows the drill. When the Germans hit a formation without fighter cover, they carve it apart. The Luftwaffe pilots know it too. For nearly 4 years, they've mocked America's attempts at long-range escort. P-47s and P-38s could protect the bombers only part of the way. Once they turned back, the German fighters emerged, like wolves waiting for the sheepdog to leave. But today feels different. Hathaway hears another voice on the radio, Major Don Blakesley, calm as a man dictating a memo. Mustang squadrons, tighten up. Let's give them a welcome. Hathaway pushes the throttle forward. The Merlin roars, the Luftwaffe pilots begin their dive. Their commander for the day, Oberleutnant Heinrich Trapp, watches the American bombers growing larger in his Revy gun sight. He can almost taste victory. Then he spots something below the bomber stream, dark silhouettes angling upward, not thunderbolts, not lightnings, something new. Sleeker. Faster. Climbing with terrifying ease, Trapp curses under his breath, "Skies. Mustangs." A few weeks earlier, he and his staffel had joked about these new American fighters, too pretty to fight. Just another toy the Americans will break. No fighter with that range could be dangerous. But the joke ends the moment Hathaway's P-51 slices through the sunlight like a blade that he tucks behind Trapp's wingman, Lieutenant Gerhard Vogel. The Mustang's speed advantage is immediately obvious. He closes the gap in seconds. Hathaway's thumb presses the trigger. .6.50 caliber Brownings erupt, their tracers streaking forward like burning needles. Vogel never even sees him. His FW-190 bursts into flame, spiraling downward in a corkscrew of smoke. Hathaway pulls up, hard. Gravity shoves him into the seat as the Mustang responds as smoothly as a racing plane. Around him, the sky erupts into chaos. P-51s pour down on the German formation, forcing them to break off their attack run. Inside the bomber, Sergeant Donnelly watches the impossible happen. The German fighters aren't charging through the formation that they're running. Another voice sweeps across the radio net, a Mustang pilot laughing in disbelief. Look at M. Scatter. For months, German pilots had boasted that the Americans would never reach Berlin. Their factories, their capital, their very airspace, untouchable. But now a new reality is dawning over central Germany. A silver fighter, once mocked as a lightweight, now has the legs to fly from England to Berlin and back, and still fight like a thoroughbred. Trapp pulls his FW-190 into a steep dive, his engine screaming as he flees. His fuel gauge is already lower than he'd like. The Mustangs, he realizes with dread, can stay up here far longer than his fighters can. One of his men radios, voice trembling, "Herr Oberleutnant, they're everywhere. And they are below the bombers. Above them. On the flanks. A curtain of Mustangs stretching horizon to horizon. Hathaway banks left to avoid debris from a disintegrating German fighter. He feels something unexpected, control. For the first time since the bombing campaign began, American escort fighters aren't barely holding the line. They're dominating the air. He levels out beside AB-17. The bomber crew waves. Hathaway dips his wings in reply. Donnelly stares at the sleek silver fighter outside his window. Where the hell did these things come from? He whispers. The radio erupts again, this time with an incredulous Texan drawl. Boys, I think we just changed the war. And in that single moment, over the factories of Ostersleben, the Luftwaffe begins to grasp a truth that will haunt them for the rest of 1944. The Americans can escort their bombers anywhere, all the way to Berlin, all the way back, every day. Forever. As the last surviving German fighters dive for the safety of cloud cover, Hathaway circles above the bombers, the Merlin humming steadily. He's cold, exhausted, but for the first time in the European Air War, he feels what no American escort pilot has ever felt before: victory, because the Germans didn't just lose aircraft today, they lost the strategic advantage they'd held since 1939. The Wolves have met a new predator, faster and fiercer than anything they expected, and it has come to hunt them in their own skies. March 22, 1944. 24,000 feet above the Elbe River, the morning sun is sharp and cold, glinting off 1,000 silver wings as the bomber stream pushes toward the dark mass of Berlin on the horizon. Even from this distance, the city looks like a smudge of smoke and steel, a capital swollen with flak batteries, emergency fighter strips, and the last hopes of a wounded Reich. Lieutenant Karl Fischer of Jagdgeschwader 11 pulls his oxygen mask tight and settles deeper into the seat of his Bf 109G6. He's 22, already a veteran with 50 claims, but exhaustion clings to him heavier than his parachute harness. Berlin. He never thought he'd be defending Berlin. His Staffel scrambles toward altitude, engines straining as they race to intercept before the bombers reach the city. The radio crackles with clipped commands, but underneath every transmission is the same unspoken dread: if the Americans reach the capital with fighter escort, the war in the air is finished. Fischer flips his gun sight on. He checks his ammunition. Enough, he hopes. His Bf 109 feels sluggish today. The winter fuel is poor, the maintenance rushed. And they all know the truth: the Luftwaffe is running out of men, out of gasoline, out of everything but desperation. His wingman, Unteroffizier Martin Keller, drifts closer, his voice shaking slightly through the radio. Think they brought the Thunderbolts again? Thunderbolts were manageable. Heavy. Slow to climb. Easy to avoid if you picked the fight correctly. Fischer almost says yes. It would be comforting, but then he sees them. Sunlight glitters off long, elegant wings slicing through contrails above the bomber stream, 50, maybe 60 of them in wide, perfect escort arcs. P-51 Mustangs, the same fighters rumor whispered about. The same ones staff officers insisted were not a serious threat. And yet here they are, in force, deep inside Germany, almost at the gates of Berlin. Keller curses. How are they this far in? No one answers. Below them, the B-17s and B-24s plow on, engines droning like distant thunder. The defensive firepower of a single bomber is deadly enough. An entire wing is a fortress without walls. Their shadows drift across the Elbe in long, moving columns. Fischer steadies his breathing. We attack as briefed. Fast, head on. Stay tight. We don't get a second pass. But even as he speaks, the Mustangs are already climbing to meet them. Smooth. Controlled. Not breaking formation, not rushing predators, not escorts. Captain Red Hathaway is among them, sweat freezing on his neck as his P-51 carries him higher into the thin air. Ahead, he spots the German formation, thin arrows against the sky, climbing too steeply, trying desperately to gain position. He knows what that means. They're late. The Luftwaffe is late to defend its own capital. He pushes the throttle, feeling the Merlin respond instantly, a surge of power so clean and steady it almost feels unfair. Inside Berlin, air raid sirens bray like wounded animals. Factory workers pour into shelters. Gunners run to flak towers built from thick reinforced concrete. The capital braces for another blow, but in the sky above, the Luftwaffe is fighting a different battle, a battle not for the city, but for survival. Fischer rolls into his attack dive, lining up the first wave of B-17s. His nerves tighten. The bombers grow larger in his sight, their formation steady, unwavering. Just a little closer, a little closer. Tracers flash past his canopy. then another burst, far too close. Mustangs. A pair of them drops onto Keller's tail with terrifying speed. Fisher barely has time to shout a warning before Keller's 109 bursts into flame, a bright orange blossom against the morning sky. His wingman spirals downward, leaving a twisting black trail. Fisher's breath catches that he can't mourn. Not here. Not now. That he pushes forward, firing a burst into the bomber formation before banking hard, nearly blacking out from the G-forces. Hathaway sees him. That he recognizes the maneuver. German veterans always tried to break away upward, using the 109's climb rate, but today, the Mustang is faster, sleeker, deadlier. That he angles in. The sun flashes across his canopy. His .50 caliber guns chatter. A wingtip shears from Fisher's plane. The 109 wobbles violently before plunging downward, smoke pouring from its cowling. Inside the bomber formation, Sergeant Donnelly watches the duel unfold below. The sight is stunning. The Germans no longer descend in disciplined waves, they don't force their way through the formation. That they're being broken apart before they even reach the bombers. Fisher fights his descending aircraft, refusing to bail out, refusing to let his machine beat him. His propeller seizes. Flames lick the cockpit glass. That he ejects the canopy and forces himself into the freezing slipstream. As he tumbles through the air, one thought pierces through the terror: if these Mustangs can reach Berlin, then Germany cannot win this war. Above him, the P-51s tighten their escort lines, the bombers march forward, the Luftwaffe bleeds. Inside the lead bomber, the navigator calls out the words that change the nature of the air war forever: Berlin dead ahead. Hathaway banks right, glancing at the capital below, a vast sprawl of smoke, factories, and flak towers bristling like iron giants. The sky is theirs now, the wolves have been driven back to their den, and the hunters are closing in. April 11, 1944. 27,000 feet above Potsdam, west of Berlin, the sky looks bruised, streaks of gray cloud, sunlight bleeding through in thin shafts that flicker across the wings of the bomber stream as it pushes east. Below, the rivers and forests around Potsdam stretch out in muted early spring colors, quiet and oblivious to the duel taking shape above them. Captain William Red Hathaway rolls his P-51D left, scanning the horizon. The air trembles with tension. His breath fogs the edges of his oxygen mask. The Merlin engine hums beneath the cowling, steady, eager, like a warhorse pawing the earth before a charge. He knows they're coming, everyone does. The Luftwaffe can't afford to let another force of bombers reach Berlin unchallenged. The radio crackles: keep your eyes sharp. They'll try to hit us before we reach Wannsee. Hathaway's wingman, Lieutenant George Lewis, coasts alongside him, his silver Mustang almost glittering against the sky. You think they'll bring the 190s again? Lewis asks. Hathaway doesn't answer. Because in that moment, he sees something far worse than FW-190s. Specks, dark, distant, climbing hard, then another wave behind them, then a third. The Luftwaffe is sending nearly everything it has left. Focke-Wulf 190s. Messerschmitt Bf-109gs, heavy Me-410s with twin cannons, even a handful of aging Bf-110s, usually left to night fighter duty. A wall of German fighters, hundreds deep, rising like a storm front. Inside one of those fighters, Hauptmann Erich Hartmann, call sign Bubi, feels sweat bead beneath his flight helmet. He's the most feared ace alive, with scores of victories behind his name. Today he leads a staffel of 109gs scrambling to intercept the Americans before they reach Berlin's industrial belts. His orders are blunt: break the bomber boxes, ignore the escorts unless necessary. Germany cannot survive losing more factories. But when he sees the escort line above the bombers, his anger hardens into something colder. Mustangs, dozens of them, layered high, layered low, waiting. Hartmann presses his throttle forward. The 109's Daimler-Benz engine howls. They've stretched their escorts all the way from England, he says quietly into the mask. Damn their fuel tanks. Yet even he cannot deny it, the Americans have solved the one problem the Luftwaffe depended on: range. Below, the bombers drone forward, powerful and steady. Inside a B-24, radio operator Staff Sergeant Eddie Rodriguez taps the edge of his headset nervously. He's been shot at over Bremen, over Hanover, over Frankfurt. But today is different. Today feels like the enemy is fighting for its capital, and for its life. A burst of flak blooms outside the bomber's right side, ugly black flowers spreading through the sky. Berlin defenses firing already? Rodriguez mutters, but it's not flak. It's cannon fire. German fighters are beginning their high-altitude dive. Bandits. 11 o'clock. The Luftwaffe attacks in a perfect synchronized wave, Me-410s on the flanks, 190s diving through the middle, 109s looping in behind to pick off stragglers. It should work. It always has worked, but this time, the escorts don't peel away, they don't trail behind, they don't turn back at the German border, they are here, above the bombers, all the way to Berlin. Hathaway pushes the throttle forward. The Merlin roars like a living thing. He banks sharply, the wings slicing through cloud streaks as he dives toward the incoming 190s. Let's go, boys. Time to turn the hunters. Lewis shouts, into the hunted. The Mustangs crash into the German formation with terrifying speed. Hathaway lines up on a 190 diving toward the bombers. He squeezes the trigger. The .50 caliber guns spit fire, tracers stitching across the German fighter's fuselage. The 190 jolts, rolls, and plummets downward trailing smoke, but the Germans press on. They have to. This is Berlin. Hartmann picks his target, a B-17 on the left edge of the lead box, and dives fast enough to feel his vision blur. He knows the price. He knows the escorts will be behind him in seconds. But he also knows that if he doesn't attack, the Reich loses another factory, another rail yard, another wound it cannot heal. He fires. A burst of cannon fire rips through the bomber's wing root. The left inboard engine bursts into flame, gunfire erupts behind him. Mustangs, Hartmann yanks his stick hard, nearly blacking out. P-51 scream past him, guns blazing. For a moment, it is chaos incarnate. Guns. Contrails. Smoke, planes tumbling past in pieces, engines howling in pain and fury. Lewis takes a hit, shrapnel tears into his left wing, but he steadies, flips upside down, and drops onto the tail of a fleeing Me-410. His guns blaze until the twin-engine heavy fighter explodes into a fireball that rolls across the sky. Hathaway barely dodges wreckage spinning past him. Below, Rodriguez watches through the bomber window, awestruck. The Germans are no longer attacking. They're scattering, breaking away, trying to survive. .1 bomber gunner shouts into the intercom, Mustangs got M on the run. Inside a fleeing Bf-109, a young German pilot named Otto Haberland slams his fist against the canopy. His hands shake. His fuel is low. His squadron is in ruins. And behind him, the P-51s are still coming, still chasing, still hunting. They shouldn't be here, he whispers. They shouldn't be able to come this far. But they have, and they can, and they will. Again and again, Hathaway climbs back into formation, breathing hard, scanning for Lewis. I'm here, Lewis replies, voice ragged. Damn holes in my wing big enough to read a newspaper through, but I'm here. The bombers push forward, engines steady. Ahead, Berlin, behind them, the Luftwaffe falls away in tatters, and for the first time in the entire air war, the Americans have not just survived a deep strike mission into Germany, they have dominated it. The hunters of the Reich have become prey in their own skies, and this turning of the tide, has only begun. May 7, 1944. 26,000 feet north of Berlin, the sky is a pale, washed-out blue, the kind that makes aircraft look like floating shadows. Far below, the Baltic Sea glimmers like molten steel. The bomber stream turns southeast, engines throbbing as it angles toward a cluster of factories outside the capital, targets that months earlier would have been unreachable without catastrophic losses. But today, the bombers do not fly alone. Major Don Blakesley, commander of the 4th Fighter Group, watches the horizon from his P-51D Mustang, Petty Second. He's calm, but the tension behind his eyes is unmistakable. He's already logged more combat hours than most men survive. His voice comes through the radio, crisp and almost eerily controlled. Stay sharp. They're desperate now. Desperate men make ugly moves. To the bomber crews below, these escorting Mustangs feel like guardian angels. To the Luftwaffe, they are an omen, a symbol that the Reich's greatest defensive weapon, its distance from enemy airfields, has evaporated. Every German commander knows what that means. If the Americans can escort their bombers from England to Berlin and back, all in a single mission, then the days of the Luftwaffe dictating when and where combat occurs are over, but Germany has not surrendered the skies yet. Inside a cramped command bunker at Werneuchen Airfield, just northeast of Berlin, Major Gunther Röhl, one of the Luftwaffe's finest Experten, with over 200 victories, leans over a plotting table. His face is pale. Fatigue lines cut deep grooves around his eyes. A junior officer pushes his headset aside and calls out numbers: 30B 17th sighted, no, 40. And a second wing behind them. Escorts, too many to count. Röhl swears quietly. There was a time German radar operators could identify American fighters and confidently predict where their range ended. Thunderbolts turned back before the Elbe. Lightnings faded before Hanover. That was the rule. That was the map of their defense. Now the map is meaningless. Outside, ground crews work furiously, fueling Bf-109GS with precious synthetic gasoline, slamming ammunition belts into FW-190s, relaying orders from one overworked commander to another. Engines cough, sputter, roar to life. Röhl climbs into his Bf-109G6, pulls the canopy shut, and signals for takeoff. As the fighter lurches forward, bouncing along the rough runway, he has a grim realization: this is not a battle for air superiority, this is a battle for survival. Far above, the bombers cross into the outer defensive ring of Berlin. The city lies ahead like a smoldering scar, factories belching smoke, flak towers jutting skyward like medieval fortresses. Hathaway and Lewis drift into position beside Blakesley's group. Their Mustangs shimmer with thin layers of ice forming along the wings. The cold bites through their gloves, through their uniforms, through everything. Lewis mutters, feels like flying into the jaws of a machine. Hathaway tightens his grip on the sticks, then lets jam it. The first German fighters appear moments later, black silhouettes rising through sunlit haze. The swarm is larger than anything the Americans have seen in weeks: over 100 fighters, 109s, 190s, even a few experimental variants the intelligence officers had only whispered about. Blakesley lifts his chin. Here they come. Angels on high, push down and engage. The Mustangs dive. What follows is less a dogfight and more a storm, planes weaving and breaking across the sky in violently intersecting arcs. Engines scream. Machine guns hammer. Contrails twist like torn threads. Röhl charges into the melee, scoring a hit on a P-51's right aileron, sending the American fighter wobbling out of formation. But before he can loop for another pass, two Mustangs fall in behind him, boxing him in. Röhl dives vertically, straight down, pulling 6, 7, 8 GS, vision tunneling into darkness. He recovers inches above the treetops, sweat pouring down his neck. These Mustangs fly like devils, he gasps. Above him, the sky is chaos. Inside a B-17 called Iron Duchess, top turret gunner Sergeant James Caldwell twists in his seat, tracking a 190 streaking past. He fires a burst, curses, adjusts, fires again. The German fighter slips through the formation before Caldwell can land a decisive hit, but this time, no swarm follows. In no second, third, or fourth wave, the Luftwaffe is fragmented, disorganized. Rodriguez, the radio operator, can't believe what he's hearing through the chaotic transmissions. They're breaking off. Mustangs pushed M out. Sky's clearing. Repeat, sky is clearing. From his Mustang, Hathaway sees it too: German fighters scattering eastward, others diving low to escape, some climbing, trying to regroup, only to be intercepted again. The Reich's once feared air defense network, disciplined, overwhelming, relentless, is disintegrating under the strain of fighting an enemy with limitless reach. Below, Berlin grows larger, larger. Larger. A sprawling industrial expanse where warships, locomotives, tanks, and munitions choke the skyline. The lead bombardier calls over. Intercom: approaching target, bombs away. A ripple of silver shapes drops from the bellies of the bombers, then another wave, and another. Explosions roll across factories, freight yards, and assembly plants, each detonation sending columns of smoke erupting into the sky. From the air, it looks like the city is boiling. and above that boiling storm, P-51 Mustang circle, unchallenged, engines humming steady like victorious drums. Hathaway watches the black plumes rise. He doesn't cheer. He doesn't smile. He just breathes out, his voice quiet. Inside the mask, this is what turning the tide looks like. On the ground, inside the ruins of a bombed-out workshop, a German mechanic named Lucas Meinhardt stares upward through a shattered roof. He sees dozens of silver silhouettes angling away from the city, sleek, glittering, unstoppable. He turns to his supervisor. They're already leaving, and we never stopped them. For the first time, the fear gripping the Luftwaffe's pilots spreads to the ground crews, to civilians, to every corner of the capital. The American fighters can reach Berlin, and if they can reach Berlin, they can reach anywhere. The myth of German invincibility in the air is dead. Hathaway climbs once more, joining Lewis beside Blakesley. The Merlin hums, the Mustangs form up, the bomber stream arcs westward, toward home. Behind them, Berlin burns. Ahead of them, the Luftwaffe is nowhere to be seen, and as the sun sets behind their wings, casting long shadows across the clouds, Hathaway whispers the truth no German pilot wants to admit: this war just changed forever. June 20, 1944. 28,000 feet over the central German plains, dawn comes slowly at this altitude, bleeding upward through the haze in a thin orange band that glints off polished aluminum. The bomber stream pushes southeast toward oil refineries near Leipzig, targets whose destruction could cripple the German war machine far more than any city or factory ever could. But today the mission feels different, heavier, more dangerous. Every pilot knows why. Intelligence had warned that the Luftwaffe is planning something large, desperate, and unprecedented. Rerouted units, veteran staffels pulled from training schools, even rumors that older aces long believed dead or wounded were being pushed back into combat. It would be Germany's last chance to stop the American advance in the air. Hathaway adjusts his oxygen mask and scans the horizon. His P-51D Lucky Lady purrs beneath him. The plane feels like an extension of his own limbs now, every vibration, every pitch, every shift in throttle exact and familiar. His wingman Lewis floats into position, the early sun reflecting off the Mustang's sleek wings. Feels too quiet, Lewis mutters, breath fogging his mask. It always does, Hathaway replies. Right before hell breaks loose. Down on the ground, hell is preparing to break loose. At an airfield near Magdeburg, Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a seasoned commander with scars across his face from a previous cockpit fire, stands beside his Bf-109G-10. Mechanics swarm over the fighter, filling fuel, slamming ammunition belts into place, tightening access panels with frantic speed. Steinhoff looks at the rows of pilots forming before him. They're too young. Too thin. Too few. Only a handful carry the confidence of veterans. He clears his throat. Americans are hitting Leipzig today. Their bombers will pass directly over our airspace. Our job is simple. We break them before they reach the oil plants. The pilots nod. Some swallow hard. One crosses himself. Steinhoff pauses, letting the silence settle into them. We won't have fuel for multiple sorties. One pass. One decisive attack. He doesn't add the final truth: this might be the last coordinated Luftwaffe assault the Reich can mount. Back in the sky, Hathaway spots the first glimmers of movement, small black specks emerging from the cloud layer below. Here they come, he says. Climbing in waves. Lewis whistles low. Looks like the whole damn Luftwaffe. Not just fighters. Twin-engine Zerstorer heavy fighters .109s in tightly packed squadrons, .190s diving in from higher altitude, even a few battered Me-410s carrying heavy cannons designed to crack bomber formation shields like eggshells. Everyone tighten formation, Blakesley orders. We stop them cold. Hathaway nudges the throttle. The Mustang responds instantly. The first German wave hits hard. Steinhoff dives with a precision born of hundreds of missions. His guns flash, scoring a burst across the wing of AB-24. The bomber lurches, trailing smoke, engine sputtering. Below it, a Mustang pulls upward like a silver lightning bolt, angling toward Steinhoff's tail. He tightens his turn, gritting his teeth as G-forces bite into his chest. For a moment, for a heartbeat, he has room to breathe. Then he sees them, Mustangs, climbing from below, diving from above, sweeping in from the flanks, everywhere. He banks hard left, threading between two contrails as gunfire crackles around him. This is insanity, he mutters, from high above. Hathaway surveys the unfolding chaos. German formations that once moved with clockwork precision now seem ragged, frantic. The younger pilots fall apart quickly under pressure, the older ones fight like cornered wolves, and yet the Mustangs hold the line, one squadron reinforcing another, weaving a living net around the bombers. Lewis breaks right, chasing a 109 that slips through the escort perimeter. He fires, short, controlled bursts. The German fighter erupts in a puff of flame, fragments spiraling downward, but then Lewis shouts, "Two more diving. Fast!" Hathaway sees them, 190 streaking down toward the bombers in a steep attack. He banks sharply, the Mustang slicing under the sun glare, pulling into their path. His guns rattle. 190 disintegrates mid-dive, pieces tumbling like shredded canvas. The second jerks away, black smoke trailing, but even crippled, even burning, the German pilot fights to stay alive, rolling, diving, pulling every trick he knows. Hathaway doesn't chase. He doesn't need to. There are more threats ahead. Inside the bombers, fear and awe battle for control. Rodriguez watches through the radio compartment window as Mustangs swarm the Germans with speed that feels unreal, like something out of a different era. "Damn," he whispers. "Look at them go." Caldwell fires from the top turret, shell casings raining down as he tracks a 410 trying to punch through the formation. The heavy German fighter fires a burst, too close. The bomber shudders. A wingtip scrapes. The formation wobbles, then a Mustang slashes through the sky, guns blazing. The 410 explodes into fragments that tumble past the bomber windows like burning leaves. Caldwell exhales shakily. "That one was ours," he whispers, but the battle isn't over. The second German wave arrives, and this one is larger, hundreds of fighters, sweeping upward in a desperate final attempt to regain control of the skies. Hathaway's heart tightens. He's never seen them commit so many at once. Lewis mutters, "They're throwing the kitchen sink at us." "More like the whole damn house," Hathaway replies, then he pushes the throttle forward. "Let's show them what a long-range escort really means." The Mustangs dive, the Germans climb, and over the heart of the Reich, beneath a sky striped with smoke and contrails, two air forces collide in a battle that will decide the future of the air war completely. One side fighting for dominance, the other fighting for existence. By the time the horizon clears, the shape of victory will no longer be in question. March 18, 1944. 15,000 feet over the Elbe River, the bomber stream has been in German airspace for more than an hour now, and the sky ahead is dark with flak bursts. The crews of the 100th Bomb Group call this stretch the Dead Man's Run, a corridor of anti-aircraft fire so dense that it feels like flying into a burning forest. The B-17 Red Queen shudders as another shell detonates close off its starboard wing. Alarms chirp. A waft of smoke seeps into the fuselage, but today, the gunners aren't just staring out of frosted windows praying for help. Today, they know someone is coming. Far behind them, almost invisible against the sun, a glint of silver grows brighter. Four polished wings slice through the cold air at more than 380 miles per hour. What the bomber crews see next sends a wave of relief through the entire formation, a long nose, a bubble canopy, and wings tipped with invasion stripes. They're here. Captain Willard Pike Lawson of the 357th Fighter Group pushes his P-51D Mustang into a shallow dive, the Merlin engine humming like a saw blade. His flight tucks in behind him, tight and disciplined. On his radio, voices crackle with tension. "Blue leader, this is Red 3. Bandits approaching from 6 high, looks like a staffel, maybe more." Pike wipes a thin band of frost from the inside of his canopy and scans upward. There they are. A wave of FW-190s, their bellies glittering in the sun, descending in a classic German bounce maneuver. Once, this tactic shredded American bomber streams. Once, no fighter could reach this deep into Germany to intercept them, but this is 1944. And everything about the air war has changed. 30 miles ahead, the first German pilots begin their attack runs. Oberfeldwebel Franz Kappel, a veteran with more than 50 combat sorties, presses his knees against the rudder pedals as he angles his 190 into a diving pass. The bomber formation below looks endless, dozens of aircraft, engines glowing red through their cowlings, lumbering toward Berlin like a fleet of steel whales. Zieler fasten, jetzt, his Staffelkapitän shouts over the radio. Kappel lines up a P-17 and squeezes the trigger. His 20mm cannons thump, spitting fire. A wing root on the bomber erupts in sparks. But even as he peels away, something in his periphery catches his attention, a flash of silver moving far too fast to be a B-17 escort he recognizes. What? A Mustang dives past him like a thrown spear. Kappel jerks his control stick left as a line of tracers slices the sky where his engine had been a heartbeat earlier that he didn't even see the American coming. For the first time in months, Kappel feels something unfamiliar tug at his stomach. Not aggression, not anger, fear. Back with the bomber escorts, Pike and his flight spread out. Stay loose, Pike says into his throat mic. They'll try to drag you down and away from the bombers. Keep altitude unless you've got the shot. His wingman, Lieutenant Jameson, Tex Hart, steadies his breathing as he watches a pair of Messerschmitt Bf 109 circling below like vultures. He wants to dive. His fingers itch. But he holds formation, then he sees it, a 190 latching onto a trailing B-17, chewing up the tail assembly. That's it, Tex mutters. Not today. He slams the throttle forward, the Merlin roars. The Mustang arcs downward like a hawk stooping for prey. Tex's guns rattle. Tracers march toward the German fighter, and for a split second, he sees the pilot twist in his cockpit, realizing too late what's happening. The 190 snaps sideways, smoke erupting from its fuselage. Scratch one, Tex says calmly, though his heartbeat feels like a hammer in his ears. Above him, Pike dives after another enemy fighter. To him, everything narrows into a single line, the target, the reticle, the distant vibration of his engine. He squeezes the trigger. A short burst. No more. A puff of smoke. A wing snaps. The 190 spirals downward. 2 kills in under 60 seconds. The sky is turning. For the German pilots, the shift is unmistakable, their attacks are disjointed. Their formations break under pressure. The Americans are not just defending the bombers, they're hunting. Kappel scans the chaos, trying to find an escape route. His fuel is already low, their airfields lie far behind enemy lines now, and the Reich can no longer stage fighters at every forward base they once controlled. He banks hard, heading northeast, but as soon as he does, a silver shape appears behind him, another Mustang. Neen, he growls, opening the throttle. His engine whines in protest. It can climb, but not like the Americans. Over the radio, he hears the panic in his comrades' voices. Mustangs. Too many. They're hitting us from above. I can't shake him. Kappel dives sharply toward a cloud bank, hoping to lose the American in the turbulence, but the Mustang stays with him. He breaks through the bottom of the cloud, and his heart sinks. Berlin lies ahead in the distance. He never thought he'd see enemy fighters this close to the capital. He had laughed months ago, like so many in the Luftwaffe, when rumors spread of a miracle American fighter that could escort bombers from England to Germany. Now, it's no rumor. It's the silver winged reality on his tail. Inside the bomber formation, the mood is electric. The Mustangs weave in and out of the formation like watchful wolves. The gunners track the dogfights unfolding above them with a WE.IN Red Queen. Staff Sergeant Hollis McLean shouts into the intercom, "Boys, you seeing this? They're driving the Krauts right off us." From the top turret, another gunner whistles, "Never thought I'd say it, but these new fighters, they're saving our hides." A radio operator in a neighboring B-17 wipes sweat from his brow. "They're not escorts anymore," he mutters, "they're the hunters." At 12:22 p.m., the bombers release their payloads over Berlin. The city below blooms with fire and smoke. The shockwaves ripple upward, rattling the bombers' airframes. The Mustangs tighten their formation above, watching for late attackers, but the Luftwaffe isn't coming back. They can't. They've lost too many planes, too many experienced pilots, to risk another assault. The sky that once belonged to Germany now belongs to something else, something faster, something deadlier, something they mocked, until it hunted them over their own capital. The Mustangs form up alongside the bombers for the long flight home. Pike glances at his fuel gauge, then at the sprawling destruction below Berlin in the rearview. He murmurs, "Didn't think I'd see the day." Tex pulls up beside him, grinning beneath his oxygen mask. "Told you this bird could make it." Pike chuckles softly. "Yeah," he says. "But I don't think the Germans are laughing anymore." The Mustangs bank west, their wings shimmering in the cold daylight. Behind them, the once fearsome Luftwaffe fades into silence. March 22, 1944. Werneuchen Airfield, east of Berlin, snowmelt pools in shallow puddles between the concrete revetments. Mechanics work with numb hands, tightening panels, refueling fighters, and trying desperately to repair whatever the last mission left behind. The air smells of gasoline, oil, and the bitter sting of burned rubber. Hauptmann Dieter Reberg, 26 years old, exhausted, and somehow already the most experienced pilot in his staffel, stands beside his Bf-109G, staring at the damage along its tail plane. A broomstick's length of metal has been carved out by .50 caliber rounds that he runs a glove across the jagged edge, too close that he lost 2 men yesterday. Good men. Men trained before fuel shortages, before engine cutbacks, before the Luftwaffe was forced to throw barely prepared boys into cockpits, men who once believed German skies were untouchable. A mechanic approaches. "We can have it patched by morning, Herr Hauptmann," he says with a forced optimism. But the engine, Reberg lifts his hand. He already knows, the Daimler-Benz is worn out. Like every other aircraft here. Like every other man, over the command shack's tin roof, a distant rumble echoes, Allied bombers heading west, returning from Berlin. And somewhere high above them, those silver guardians are escorting them home. Again a runner sprints from the operations hut. "Herr Hauptmann." Orders from command. Another interception at 1,400 hours. Same corridor. Reberg closes his eyes briefly. Another corridor. Another mission. Another slaughter, but he nods. "Tell them the Staffel will be ready." He doesn't have the luxury of refusing. Germany is burning behind him. The sky is slipping from their grasp, and above it all, the Mustangs are waiting. Same day. 27,000 feet above the Oder River, Captain Pike Lawson wipes condensation from the inside of his goggles. His P-51 vibrates steadily, the Merlin humming beneath him like a living pulse. He's cold, hungry, and tired, but he's alive. More alive than he ever felt flying the P-47. The Mustangs stretch out in a wide escort arc behind a returning B-24 formation. Their oxygen masks hiss rhythmically as they breathe. The air up here is thin, razor-sharp, and tinged with the scent of gunpowder. "Blue leader, you copy?" Tex crackles through the radio. Ground-based radar reports bandits inbound. Likely from Werneuchen. Pike smiles grimly. That didn't take them long. 5 minutes later, they see them, scattered dark specks climbing into the sun, the German pilots trying to gain altitude before engaging. A desperate tactic, and today, desperation meets capability. Pike banks his Mustang. "Stay high. Stay fast. We make the first move." The P-51s peel into a sweeping turn, silver wings glittering like knives in the daylight. Below, the Luftwaffe pilots see the glint, and their formation wavers. Inside the German flight, fear ripples like static. Reberg hears it in his men's voices. "Are those Mustangs? Impossible, this far east? God help us." He tightens his grip on the control stick. "Hold formation," he orders sharply. "We have altitude. Make them come up to us." His words are confident. His chest is not that he has seen these Mustangs slice through entire Gruppen like wolves through sheep. They don't just attack, they anticipate. They dive, climb, and turn with a precision he's never seen, and worst of all, they have fuel, they have numbers, they have time, all things the Luftwaffe no longer possesses. The American fighters rise toward them, engine snarling like a pack ready for the kill. Reberg swallows hard. "Brace yourselves." The clash is sudden, violent, chaotic. Pike angles upward and snaps off a burst at a 109 diving toward the bombers. The tracers connect. The Messer's left wing snaps off cleanly, spinning the fighter into a tumbling fireball that he has no time to confirm the kill. Another German fighter slashes past. Pike rolls, cuts throttle, then punches it again, and the Mustang pivots behind the fleeing 190 like it's attached by wire that he fires once. The German plane detonates in a cloud of debris. The sky is full of them now, twisting contrails, bursts of cannon fire, the scream of engines overstrained and burning. Tex is on the tail of a 109 that's trying every evasive maneuver in the book. The German dives. Tex dives. The German pulls up. Tex pulls up. Give it up, pal, Tex mutters, steadying his sight. You're out of tricks. He pulls the trigger. A short burst. Smoke. The canopy pops open and the German pilot bails out, chute blooming like a white flower in the frozen sky. Tex exhales. One more who won't be coming back. Below the melee, the bomber crews watch in stunned silence. Look at M, a waist gunner whispers. They're driving the Hun right into the dirt. The Mustangs aren't escorting anymore. They're dominating. For the first time, the Luftwaffe's hunters are the hunted, and everyone in the bomber stream knows it. Back in the fight, Reberg is outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of time. His gauges are screaming at him. Fuel low, oil temp climbing, engine coughing. A shadow slides over his canopy. He looks up. A Mustang that it drops in behind him with breathtaking ease. Reberg yanks into a dive, praying the American won't follow, but the P-51 sticks to him like a predator that has already chosen its kill. Reberg's breath fogs his goggles. He can hear his own pulse. He knows what's coming. He whispers to himself, so this is how it ends. Just then, salvation. A cloud bank. He plunges into it, disappearing into the freezing mist. When he bursts out the other side, the Mustang is gone. He doesn't question the miracle. He angles west, limping home, engine sputtering like a dying animal. Behind him, the sky is filled with burning wrecks. His homeland, the skies he once ruled, now belong to the silver fighters that appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. He lands his battered 109 with an engine coughing its last breaths. Mechanics rush toward him. His commanding officer approaches. Reberg pulls off his gloves. His hands shake. They're everywhere. He says quietly, we cannot win the skies anymore. And for the first time, command does not argue. At 1742, the Mustangs cross back over the North Sea. The sun is sinking. The bomber formation descends toward England. The pilots are exhausted, cramped, and half frozen, but triumphant. Pike's voice crackles over the radio. Good work today, boys. Let's bring M home. Tex laughs softly. Say, Pike, think the Germans are still laughing at the Mustang? Pike looks back at the contrails stretching behind them, a long silver line leading home. Not anymore. The Mustangs descend into the orange glow of dusk, engines humming in perfect harmony. Behind them, the Luftwaffe bleeds another irreplaceable day of pilots, fuel, and hope. The tide has turned, and the Mustang, once underestimated, mocked, dismissed, has become the blade at Germany's throat. April 11, 1944. Merseburg, Germany. Dawn breaks cold and gray over the massive Luna synthetic fuel plant. Chimneys stretch like skeletal fingers into the sky, pumping out the lifeblood of the Reich, aviation fuel. The installations hum with activity, trucks hauling drums, laborers scurrying between pipelines, flak crews scanning the horizon for the inevitable. Everyone here knows what's coming, they just don't know when. Inside a watchtower above the refinery, Oberleutnant August Streicher presses binoculars to his eyes. He's a ground officer, not a pilot, but he's studied the sky enough to recognize the sound of engines even before they appear. At first, he hears a low vibration, then the unmistakable roar of hundreds of radial engines echoing from the west. He mutters a single word, bomber. The klaxons wail. Below him, flak batteries swivel like angry beasts waking from sleep, but Stryker sees something else beyond the shimmering bomber stream. A second formation. Sleek. Fast. Silver. His jaw sets. Not again. The Mustangs are back, and they aren't just escorting, they're leading. 25,000 feet above the refinery, the pilots of the 4th Fighter Group soar ahead of the bomber formation. Their mission today is explicit: find the Luftwaffe, break it. Don't let it rise again. Captain Pike Lawson, now hardened by months of long-range missions, narrows his eyes as he sees faint contrails far to the east. German fighters scrambling to intercept Blue Squadron. "We're going hunting," he says, voice calm, "let the bombers handle the plant. We handle the sky." Tex gives a sharp laugh over the mic, "That's what we do best." The Mustangs angle upward, engines howling, slicing toward the distant threat. At 27,000 feet, the Luftwaffe assembles for what command insists will be a decisive counterblow, but the pilots know better. They've flown too many missions. They've seen too many new graves at the airfields. Their fuel is rationed. Their engines run thin oil. Their formations include both grizzled veterans and terrified boys with barely 20 hours of flight time. Hauptmann Reberg is in the lead again, though he scarcely recognizes the men around him anymore. Half of them are strangers, too many are inexperienced, all of them are outmatched. He rubs a hand across his brow. "We'll engage in pairs," he instructs, forcing authority into his voice. "Protect each other. Stay disciplined." Someone asks, "Herr Hauptmann, what about the Mustangs?" Reberg hesitates, then replies quietly, "Pray they're not here yet." They appear moments later, like ghosts materializing from the sun. 12 P-51s diving at over 400 miles per hour, guns glinting, contrails spiraling behind them like comet tails. Pike's voice cuts through the radio, "Pick your targets, clean and fast. Don't chase too deep." The Mustangs fall upon the German formation with terrifying precision. Their opening burst scatters the 109s before the fight has even begun. Reberg shouts, "Break! Break!" But it's too late. One of his youngest pilots, barely 18, is hit before he can even bank away. His plane shears apart in a bloom of fire. Another tries to flee into a steep dive, but a Mustang drops in behind him, guns flickering. The Messer explodes into a black smear against the clouds. Reberg finds himself alone in seconds. It's not a dogfight. It's a dismantling. Down below, the bomber stream approaches Merseburg. The B-24 crews watch the spectacle above them with disbelief. One gunner whispers, "Dear God! The sky's ours." The Mustang pilots, done tearing apart the interceptors, wheel around and begin strafing the flak positions around the refinery. Their .50 caliber guns chew through gun pits, ammo dumps, and parked aircraft like paper targets. Flak crews fire wildly, bravely, but hopelessly. A Mustang screams low over a row of emplacements, guns flashing, explosions ripple across the ground, then another Mustang, and another. The German positions buckle under the relentless assault. When the bombers finally release their payloads, nothing rises to stop them. The Luna refinery burns in a hellish column that can be seen for 30 miles. A Stryker watches from his tower as flames engulf entire sections of the industrial complex. Men run for cover. Pipes burst. The sky turns black. He lowers his binoculars. "This," he whispers, "is the end." In the air above, the Mustangs regroup. Pike checks in with his flight. "Blue 2, status." "I'm good, boss." "Blue 3, fuel low but holding." "Blue 4, no hits, clear skies." Tex's laugh crackles on the frequency. "Well boys, I'll say it plain, the Luftwaffe don't own this place anymore." Pike glances down at the burning refinery. "No," he says softly, "they don't." His words are not boastful. They're tired. Somber. Respectful in their own way. He knows the truth. Today's destruction isn't just about fuel. It's about the Luftwaffe's last oxygen, and the Mustang is the hand tightening around it. For the Luftwaffe, the defeat is catastrophic. Dozens of fighters lost, pilots irreplaceable, fuel production crippled. Reberg limps home again, engine smoking, heart heavy. When he lands, his commanding officer approaches, expecting a report. Reberg steps out of the cockpit and simply says, "We have lost the air, and soon, Herr Oberst, we will lose the war." No one contradicts him, because they all know it's true. That evening, back in England, Pike and his squadron roll to a stop on the grass strip. Ground crews cheer. Medics rush forward. Mechanics swarm the Mustangs, patting them like victorious racehorses. Pike removes his oxygen mask, face pale, lips cracked from the cold. Tex walks up beside him, shaking out his stiff arms. "Well," Tex says, "that was one for the books." Pike nods, But his eyes drift upward. The sky is darkening over the English coast. A sky the Germans once commanded. A sky the Allies feared to enter. A sky that today, and from now on, belongs to the Mustang. The Luftwaffe will continue to fight, bravely, desperately, fiercely, but after today, the outcome is set. Their pilots cannot be replaced, their fuel cannot be restored, their homeland skies are no longer theirs. From 1944 onward, every mission over Germany ends the same way, with silver wings. Circling above, with Merlin engines growling like distant thunder, with German pilots looking over their shoulders and seeing the hunter that changed everything, the P-51 Mustang, once dismissed, mocked, underestimated, has become the executioner of the Luftwaffe, and it will not stop, not until the war itself ends. May 12, 1944. Southwest of Hanover, Germany, the morning haze clings low over the landscape, a pale veil drifting across fields that once bustled with peacetime life. Now, they carry the scars of bomb craters, burned-out transport trucks, and abandoned Luftwaffe dispersal sites. From the cockpit of his P-51D Lucky Lady, Captain Pike Lawson peers through the shifting mist, watching the dark line of a German supply column snaking along a narrow forest road. Blue Squadron, he says quietly into the mic, we're sweeping ahead of the bombers. Keep your eyes open. Enemy transport might be moving fuel reserves. Tex's voice crackles back, affirmative, Pike. I see movement at 11 o'clock. Trucks, long line of M. Pike takes a breath. All right boys, let's take the Luftwaffe's legs out from under them. The Mustangs descend like falcons, their Merlin engines roar as they skim just above the treetops, and then the guns open. 50 caliber rounds rake through the supply convoy. Trucks burst into flames. Fuel tankers erupt into fireballs that climb 100 feet into the air. Soldiers scatter, some firing desperate bursts from rifles and machine guns. It doesn't matter, the Mustangs sweep through again. And again, when the smoke finally clears, the entire convoy is reduced to smoldering wreckage. Tex pulls up alongside Pike. That, he says, ought to keep their fighters grounded for days. Pike nods, but his thoughts drift upward, toward the bomber stream approaching from the west, because today's mission isn't about trucks. It's about the skies ahead, far above the clouds. The 8th Air Force is moving east in record numbers. Hundreds of heavy bombers glint in the sunlight, formation after formation stretching for miles. Their contrails weave an enormous white tapestry across the sky, a sight that would have been unthinkable only a year ago, when few bombers returned from deep Germany missions. But now the Mustangs clear the path, and the Luftwaffe knows it. The German airfield in Wunstorf, Oberst Karl Hendricks, commander of a shrinking Jagdgeschwader, slams his fist onto the operations table. What do you mean they can strike Hanover and be back over the Ruhr within an hour? He shouts at his chief of staff. That's impossible. No fighter has that sort of range. The officer hesitates. Herr Oberst, the Americans do. Hendricks paces the cramped command room, the floor vibrating with distant explosions. He stops, gripping the back of a wooden chair. When did things change this much? He murmurs, almost to himself. A runner bursts in, panting. Herr Oberst, radar reports multiple American escort flights approaching. Mustangs. Lots of them. Hendricks closes his eyes, not fear, not even anger, resignation that he knows his pilots are exhausted. Their fuel tanks are half full at best. Their aircraft are patched, underpowered, and outclassed, but orders are orders. He straightens, cold determination settling over him. Scramble the 109s. Outside, the air raid sirens begin their mournful wail. Back in the sky, Pike leads Blue Squadron north. Contact, Tex reports. Climbing from the deck. Looks like hell. That's a lot of them. More than 30 Luftwaffe fighters rise from the treetops in loose, hurried formations. Their engines belch smoke. Their movements lack discipline. But there are enough of them to cause damage. If they break through, Pike presses his gloved hand onto the throttle. Blue Squadron, this is it. We engage. No one gets through to the bombers. His men answer one by one. Roger. With you, Captain. Let's get it done. Then the sky collides. The first pass is brutal. The Mustangs dive from above, the sun behind them. Their opening volleys tear through the German formation. 2 109s explode immediately. A third spirals downward trailing black smoke, but the German survivors fight back ferociously. Tracer fire stitches across the sky. A burst rips past Texas canopy. Another Mustang takes a glancing hit and pulls away, engine sputtering. Pike swings around hard that he catches a 190 climbing sharply toward the bombers, a lone predator hoping to break through the line. Not today. Pike mutters that he squeezes the trigger, his guns roar. The 190's cockpit explodes in a shower of debris. The fighter flips over and plummets from the heavens. Pike pulls up sharply. The sky is a swirling storm of contrails and fire. In the chaos, Hendricks fights with the desperation of a man who knows he has no future victories left. He guns his 109 into a steep climb, hunting for any opening toward the bomber stream, but the Mustangs block every path. He rolls left and finds one on his tail, rolls right. Another Mustang cuts him off, climbs. A silver shape emerges above him, dives. 2 more follow him. Down, every direction he turns. There. He once mocked this aircraft. He once laughed when pilots reported being outmaneuvered by it. Now, surrounded by its shimmering wings, he whispers, "This machine, it has ended us." He breaks left sharply, but Pike is already there. The American fires a short, clean burst. Hendricks' engine erupts in flames. The cabin fills with smoke. The 109 begins its death dive. For a moment, just a moment, the German commander accepts his fate, but then he pulls the canopy release. He ejects into the cold air, parachute snapping open above him. As he drifts downward, he watches the Mustangs chase the remnants of his Staffel across the sky, the hunter and the hunted, the inevitable, the end of an era. From the bomber formation, the gunners watch the scene unfold with awe. One leans against his turret glass, whispering, "They didn't get near us." Not one. Another, shaking his head, says, "Those Mustangs, they own the sky." Above them, Pike's voice comes through the radio, "Form up, Blue Squadron. We're clear. Let's bring the heavies home." As the Mustangs escort the bombers westward, the German countryside burns below, convoys gutted, airfields smashed, fighters scattered, fuel tanks destroyed. The Luftwaffe is no longer the hunter. It is prey, outnumbered, outfought, outranged, outmaneuvered, and every German pilot knows it. Every time they see that silver shape on the horizon, they feel it. The war in the air is ending, not with a final battle, but with a slow, relentless strangling. A strangling delivered by the wings they once laughed at. The P-51 Mustang has claimed the sky, and it will not give it back. March 1945. North of Berlin, air temperature, -40°C at altitude. The sky is a pale, brittle blue, the kind that feels like it might shatter if a gunshot cracked too loudly. Captain James "Hawkeye" Ellison levels his P-51D Mustang into formation, the city of Berlin rising through the haze like a wounded giant. Buildings stand half-collapsed, rail yards burn in slow orange smears, and anti-aircraft batteries flash from the suburbs like angry fireflies. He's been here before. But this time, the sky is different. No swarm of FW-190s tightening from the east. No diving Bf-109 slashing at bomber seams. No taunting radio chatter in thick German accents, just an empty, hollow quiet, the kind that unsettles even the most hardened veterans. Ellison's wingman, Lieutenant Roy Cutler, finally speaks, "Where the hell are they? We should have been hit 10 minutes ago." Major Frank Torres, leading Yellow Squadron, confirms what everyone else sees: Luftwaffe's not coming up. Either they can't, or they won't. And with those words, the P-51 pilots realize what months of fierce fighting have achieved. Berlin, Germany's heart, once protected by elite Jagdgeschwader, is exposed. The bombers roll onward, unchallenged. The Mustangs surf the slipstream above them, their Merlins humming like Predator hearts finally beating without opposition. But the American pilots feel no triumph, only a strange, uneasy weight. Because every fighter ace up here knows, when the sky goes quiet, it's because the enemy can know. Longer rise to meet you. Down below, in a camouflaged bunker outside Tempelhof Airfield, Oberleutnant Friedrich Adler stares at the fuel ledger in disbelief. They have fuel for 2 sorties, total. Not for 2 squadrons. For 2 planes. He looks at the scattered maintenance logs. Most machines are grounded, no tires, no coolant lines, no replacement propellers. Several perfectly flyable aircraft sit useless because their pilots have already been buried. Germany, once the terror of Europe's skies, can no longer defend its own capital. A young mechanic, barely 16, brings him bad news. Herr Oberleutnant, the Americans are back over Berlin. Adler doesn't bother to look up. I know. Let them come. Above the city, the 357th Fighter Group forms a protective shield around the 1st Bomb Division's B-17s, engines droning like a procession of steel giants. Ellison checks his gauges, oil pressure steady, coolant temp good, ammo belts full. He almost feels guilty. The Mustang is in its prime, while the Luftwaffe is in its death throes. But that calm shatters a moment later. A lone aircraft rises from the airfield below, a desperate streak of silver and smoke. It's a Bf-109G, canopy glinting in the sun. Climbing toward impossible odds. Single bandit, 11 o'clock low, making a run. Cutler calls. Ellison narrows his eyes. The German isn't trying to attack anyone. He's climbing toward the formation as if pulled by duty alone, a final, solitary defiance. Torres orders restraint. Hold fire unless he engages. The German pilot reaches 20,000 feet, engine screaming in protest. Then, he stops climbing, stalls, wings shudder, the 109 drops, tumbling toward the earth in a helpless spiral. No shots fired. No duel, just gravity claiming what fuel and strength no longer remain. Cutler whispers, Christ, they're finished. Ellison doesn't answer. The moment feels wrong, like witnessing an execution rather than a battle. By the time the bombers release their payloads over the rail lines and factories, the truth has settled in. The Luftwaffe, once feared across Europe, has been defeated not just by superior machines, but by exhaustion, attrition, and the relentless reach of the Mustang's range. This is what long-range escort really meant. Not just survival, domination. Every time the P-51s reached deeper into Germany, they took more pilots, more fuel, more hope away from the Reich. The war in the air wasn't ending with a grand duel, it was ending with silence. The formation turns for home. As the Mustangs bank westward, Ellison looks down at Berlin, fires cooling, smoke drifting, rail yards exploding in slow waves of dust. Then he sees something unexpected. A small group of German civilians stands in the rubble of a neighborhood square, staring up. Not running. Not hiding. Just watching. One woman lifts her child to see the passing planes, another man removes his hat. Ellison feels the weight in his chest settle. War isn't just machines and tactics. It's people, exhausted, displaced, broken, waiting for an ending. Over the radio, Torres speaks softly, this is almost over, boys. Stay sharp. Bring it home. The Mustangs throttle up, propellers cutting through the cold March air. Their shadows streak across the ruins like long, dark signatures of a future rapidly approaching. No laughter from German pilots today. No radio taunts. No attacks, just the quiet acceptance of a sky that no longer belongs to the Reich, and the Mustang, once mocked, now rules it completely. April 24, 1945. 26,000 feet over the outskirts of Leipzig, the sun glares off the Mustang's polished aluminum, a harsh brilliance that paints the clouds below in stark white. Captain Pike Lawson eases back on the stick, feeling the subtle vibration of Lucky Lady beneath him, steady, alive, dominant. Every pilot in his squadron knows what today represents. Another mission, yes, but also another demonstration of the irreversible shift in the air war over Europe. He glances at Tex hard in the wing position. Look at Tex, Pike mutters. The sky's empty. No one's even trying. Tex's grin is visible even under his oxygen mask. They're gone, boss. Just, gone. It isn't just a statement of fact. It's a declaration. The Luftwaffe no longer controls the sky. What remains are scattered, depleted units, shadows of what once terrorized Western Europe. Meanwhile, inside a command post in Dresden, General Major Heinrich von Brecht stares at the map sprawled before him. Red dots represent American bomber formations, black lines indicate approaching fighter escorts, a relentless grid of silver that stretches further into Germany than any Luftwaffe planner ever imagined. Report, he demands. A young aide hesitates. The Mustangs, sir, they are escorting every raid into the heart of Germany. The Luftwaffe, they are unable to intercept. Fuel shortages, pilot losses, most airfields are in ruins. Brecht slams a fist onto the table. Impossible, he spits. We are still Germany. The Reich will defend its skies. A pause. Then, quietly, yes, sir, but the sky is no longer ours. For the first time, Brecht feels the finality of defeat creeping in. The iron grip the Luftwaffe once held, the fear, the control, the invincibility, has been stripped away by a single aircraft and the pilots who mastered it in the air over Leipzig. Pike leads Blue Squadron in a high sweep. Below them, rail lines smolder, communication hubs lie in ruins, and any remaining Luftwaffe fighters stay grounded, powerless to contest. A lone 109 tries a desperate climb from a hidden airfield. Bandit, 11 o'clock low. Tex reports. Pike studies the aircraft. It's tired, patched, a skeleton of what it once was. Let him climb, Pike says calmly. This one won't make it. The 109 struggles, the engine coughing and sputtering. Pike positions Lucky Lady high above, guns ready but untouched. The German pilot fights to gain altitude, but exhaustion and attrition betray him. In a final, futile gesture, he pulls up too steeply. The 109 stalls. The fuselage jerks violently before plummeting. No Mustang fired a shot. It didn't need to. The air itself, controlled by the relentless range, speed, and firepower of the P-51, is the executioner. Below, civilians witness the skies, children point. Women shield their eyes. Men remove hats. From ruined cities to countryside villages, people look upward, seeing the unmistakable silver wings of the Mustang passing overhead. It is not just an aircraft anymore, it is a symbol, a promise that the tide has turned, that the long shadow of the Luftwaffe is broken, that the Allies can strike deep into the Reich with impunity. Back in England, pilots debrief after another mission. The fatigue is palpable, but so is the exhilaration. Pike stands before the group, removing his helmet, letting the wind and frost dry on his face. You've done what no one thought possible, he says. We've protected our bombers. We've destroyed their air power. We've changed the course of the war. Tex nudges him. And they laughed at us once, he adds, grinning. Pike chuckles softly. They laughed, until we hunted them over Berlin. No one laughs now. The statement carries weight, not just of victory, but of a transformation in the air war. Germany's fighters no longer dominate the sky. The P-51 Mustang, once underestimated, is now the undisputed ruler of the European airspace. From Berlin to Dresden, from the Rhine to the Oder, German pilots, veterans and novices alike, tell the same story in hushed tones. The Americans have a new fighter. It comes from nowhere. It never tires. It never lets you pass. It hunts, it kills, it dominates. The irony is inescapable. The plane they once mocked is now the executioner of their once proud Jagdwaffe. Above the continent, the Mustangs return home. The pilots are battered, frozen, exhausted. Yet as they cross the English Channel, the silence of the skies behind them is deafening. No interceptors. No dogfights. No last-minute attacks. Just open air, unchallenged. It is a victory hard won, a victory absolute. Pike looks over the formation, his eyes tracing the sleek silhouettes of his squadron. They can rebuild planes, he says quietly, but they can't rebuild the pilots they've lost. Not fast enough. Not ever. And in that moment, he realizes the full significance. The P-51 Mustang has not only escorted bombers. It has destroyed the Luftwaffe's heart. It has turned the air war over Europe decisively in favor of the Allies. It has hunted, and it has triumphed. A soft wind ripples over the English countryside, the silver wings glide homeward, engines purring like satisfied predators. Above Europe, the sky is theirs. The Luftwaffe, once feared across the continent, has been unmade, chased, cornered, and finally conquered by the plane they laughed at. The Mustang has won.